Is there anything that human rights groups can do in order to prevent future killings of homosexuals, LGBTQs in Iran?
Sadly, there is very little that can be done because the Iranian regime is basically a law unto itself. It is pretty much impervious to criticism. And we know that these executions are part and parcel of a much wider abuse of human rights in Iran, where people who criticize the regime, people who campaign, for example, for labor rights for workers in Iran, women's rights activists, ethnic minorities from the Baluch, Kurdish, and Awazi Arab communities, they are all subjected to very severe repression and sometimes executions, often on trumped-up charges. The problem with the Iranian legal system is that it's not opaque. In many cases, these executions take place after palpably unfair trials on disputed charges. And that's the problem in this particular case as well. We don't know the full details because they've never been published. We are relying on Iranian human rights groups who are by and large reliable and well-informed and have repeatedly made allegations of the execution of LGBT plus people. And those allegations have subsequently been proven to be true. So I'm fairly confident that in this case, this is another example of Iran's homophobic policy that goes as far as actual execution.
We talked about some of the data that is available as of 2008, 6,000 people of LGBTQ orientation have been executed, according to data from a British foundation. I do want to ask you if the situation is similar anywhere else in the world in terms of numbers.
In terms of that number of 6,000, again, it is very hard to be certain because often people are charged not just with homosexuality, but with other crimes. And whether they committed other crimes or the other crimes are merely a cover to justify the execution, that is unclear. So we have to be very careful about precise numbers because, as I said, the Iranian justice system is not transparent. It is not clear in many instances. My own view is that regardless of whether the number is 6,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or whatever, every single life lost is wrong and unjust. And particularly to have the death penalty in an Iranian legal system where defendants often only meet their own defense lawyers, if they're granted one at all, perhaps 15 or 30 minutes before a trial, and the trial is over in 15 minutes, it is very clear that these are unfair trials and the executions are without proper legal basis. What the international community does need to do, I think, is step up sanctions on the elite. I'm not in favor of generalized sanctions against the Iranian people. They are under the yoke of an oppressive, tyrannical regime, but certainly the political and religious leadership needs to be sanctioned in a much more coherent and sustained way. And where there is evidence of wrongdoing, then international arrest warrants should be issued against those people responsible. In this particular case, I think the sanctions and arrest warrants ought to be issued for the judicial, police, and prison authorities who are responsible for these executions.
Anywhere else in the world where the situation is as grief for LGBTQ people?
Iran is pretty unique, but of course the death penalty exists for homosexuality in 12 Muslim majority countries. So other countries include Saudi Arabia, which is a Western ally, which Western governments collude with and collaborate with, and of course many others. But I think that in terms of numbers, Iran has the highest known or recorded rate. So it does stand out above all others. This is not to say that other countries do not indulge in severe repression. So, for example, in Cameroon, which is a member of the Commonwealth Association of Nations, homosexuality is not punishable by death, but it is punishable by severe imprisonment. And indeed, people are currently in jails in Cameroon, very brutal, harsh jails on charges of homosexuality. Similar non-state repression exists in other countries, like in parts of Pakistan. LGBT plus people are liable to possibly be stoned to death under Sharia law in some of the more remote regions of the country. It's not official state policy. State policy is life imprisonment in Pakistan, but in the remote rural areas where the state does not have full sway, LGBT plus people can be at risk of execution by Sharia law, basically after mob rule.
Yeah. Peter Tatchell in London, thank you very much for those insights and for joining us today.